Hello, this is Coding Gicha for full-stack developers. Even if you're paying for a web hosting company's VPS service to ensure stable server operation, you shouldn't be overly trusting them. Relying solely on the web hosting company's backup system can lead to the loss of all information and data in an instant. The server could suddenly be permanently suspended, and access to programs and data on the server could be completely blocked. I'll also discuss web hosting company policies that may seem unfair to customers as well as their lax security theater system. This video is based on an actual incident where a web hosting company detected brute force activity on its VPS, suspending it and completely blocking access to it. I made this video because I was heartbroken by this incident at a web hosting company I recommended to an acquaintance. I'll cover some precautions when using web hosting services. To reproduce this, I borrowed a VPS service my acquaintance was using and made this video. The gicha.org address I'm accessing is an address that was used for video recording with an empty VPS IP address registered in a record after the transfer. This is not the domain address that was suspended. I found out later that there was no actual brute force attack or activity, but the server's IP was blacklisted because it was detected to have the potential to be used for brute force activity, which resulted in the server being automatically suspended. When a server is suspended, not only is the website inaccessible, but SSH connections are also blocked, and access to the management interface is blocked altogether. The only way to contact the customer success team is by clicking the button. However, clicking the Contact Us button only allows chat with Cody. I suspect this is what's driving acquaintance mad. Whether automatically or manually, the web hosting company suspended the server, so they should already know the reason. However, there's no information, only the word abuse. Clicking the Contact Us button as instructed only brings up a chatbot. The service is suspended and needs to be restored immediately, so being asked to chat with the chatbot seems infuriating. The email address he received when signing up with the web hosting company also had the same reason for the suspension: abuse. He said he sent an email directly asking how to unsuspend his VPS after it was suspended. However, once again, the AI was responding. The only response he received was that the VPS service could not be directly unsuspended because it required intervention from the troubleshooting or support team. He said he no longer wanted to interact with the AI and asked them to relay the customer's request to the human compliance or abuse team. However, he received the absurd response that they were unable to do so. Ultimately, he sent a more provocative email, and only then was it filtered out, allowing him to receive support from the human compliance or abuse team. After wasting several days exchanging dozens of meaningless emails with the AI, he was finally able to unsuspend his VPS. There was no specific reason for the suspension, and they only said that it was suspended due to brute force activity. As soon as the VPS was unsuspended, he stopped the web server, backed up the data via SSH, and transferred the sites to another VPS. Hostinger's services are automated, and its customer support is handled by AI, not humans. Even in urgent situations, he had to wait for support to be contacted directly. Therefore, he transferred the sites to another web hosting provider's VPS. A few days later, even though the web server was stopped, the VPS was suspended again. Fortunately, all the sites were transferred after Hostinger's VPS was suspended. Since he said he no longer wanted to use the suspended Hostinger VPS, I asked my acquaintance to let me use the remaining time, so I made this video. I also tried to contact the human compliance or abuse team to unsuspend my VPS again, but as my acquaintance had said, I could only communicate with the AI, and I wasted several days. After leaving a strong message as my acquaintance had suggested, I finally managed to contact the human compliance or abuse team and finally unsuspend my VPS. If your VPS is blacklisted due to brute force attack or activity, the best solution is to quickly back up your data as soon as it's unsuspended and change your IP address without delay. Even if your VPS is permanently suspended, refunds for the remaining period are often not provided, so changing your IP address as soon as possible is crucial to avoid permanent suspension. Most web hosting providers don't offer the ability to change IP addresses on their VPS services. Changing your server location will automatically change your IP address to the appropriate regional IP range. Hostinger currently disables server location changes for 30 days after they've been made, so it's currently disabled. Even reinstalling the OS often doesn't change the IP address. Changing the server location is the most reliable solution. This time, I received a more detailed explanation from the human compliance or abuse team regarding the suspension. The IP was detected as spam, blacklisted, and the server was suspended. My acquaintance's VPS had an annual leave management system, a feature that notified approval line results via email and registered and used business Gmail's SMTP. UCE Protect appears to collect the IP addresses of servers sending SMTP messages and blacklists those without DKIM, SPF, or DMARC settings. If you lack email expertise, you may not be able to properly configure anti-spam settings. Therefore, using the SMTP mail delivery feature will likely result in your being blacklisted by UCE Protect. It seems unlikely that many customers will configure their SMTP to the appropriate level when UCE Protect is applied. AWS blocks port 25 to prevent SMTP use, so I think Hostinger should also block port 25 to avoid confusion. AWS offers Amazon SES as compensation for the disabling of SMTP. Even if Hostinger doesn't provide a separate email sending service like AWS does, there are services like SendGrid or Mailgun that specialize in email sending, so disabling SMTP seems like a better approach than strictly requiring anti-spam processing. Looking at the entire process, I feel Hostinger's policy may feel somewhat unfair to customers. Customers were suddenly suspended after being informed of the abuse without any explanation. Unsuspending the server took an inordinate amount of time, and if it was suspended a second time, it would be permanent with no compensation for the remaining time. This can feel undeniably unfair. As I'm not a Hostinger representative, I can only speculate. However, I suspect Hostinger has invested significant resources in strengthening security measures, and as a result, they've implemented measures to automatically suspend a server when brute force attack or activity is detected. However, I suspect these measures are merely part of a security theater strategy. Rather than truly protecting customers' servers from brute force attacks or exploits, they may have simply resorted to the show of having devices that detect such attacks and automatically suspend servers. I believe they need to continuously improve through fundamental measures. If you rely too heavily on the services and management of your web hosting provider, similar incidents can occur on your server. Next time, I'll introduce a method for safely backing up to an external server. In particular, I'll introduce a method for faster and safer backups using incremental backups. Thank you for watching.